Hey everybody, it's Mike with Pontoon Hydrofoil. Just here today for another little bit of an instructional video. We've had some people that are receiving our VARA plates and they have been a little bit off in size. And what we've found is that there's some manufacturers, we won't say who, but there's a couple manufacturers out there on some of the newer motors and also some of the old ones for that matter, that have a different footprint on your anti-ventilation plate versus the actual width or what we would call the dimension around the lower unit. So the plate meets the lower unit at a 90-degree angle. There's usually a radius in that meeting, and the dimensions that we need to get this plate correctly mounted to your boat are very easy. But when we CNC these, we do them off of offsets that we have on many, many models. However, it seems like once a month now we're getting into a model that we don't have or that we do have, and it may not match what you personally have. So we will at that point ask you to go ahead and pull a template. It's extremely easy. You pull a template off of your actual motor so that we can either, number one, double check, or in a case where we don't have your model, we will actually build or CNC from that model by using our offset machine. And then once we take the offsets of the template that you send us, then we have that built at our CNC shop. And then we have a direct match for your VARA plate needs. Now, as you know, this VARA plate comes with our Hydrofoil kit. It's also available on its own as a standalone plate for your vessel to help the pitch moments, right? So if you have a boat that's statically sitting at the dock and it's, you know, really bow high because you may either have a motor that's too big, the motor might be further back on a motor mount. You know, some motor mounts come further back in the boat and they give it more leverage to stand the bow up. If you have that problem of getting the bow down, this is an extremely strong way. As you can tell, we can lift the entire weight of the boat with this plate. This is not rubber. This is a very strong PVC type 1, but it's modified, okay? And we only get these at, there's only a couple companies we can get this at. This material at. This material is also offered in a gray or a white. So in this case, we could have had a white that would have matched it, but we just had a customer. The reason I bring that up is we just had a customer who didn't like the gray, didn't like the white, and he wanted to match his motor directly. I believe it was a Mercury, and it was a much darker motor. It was a, you know, blacker, old, I think an Optimax they called it. And that motor, what he did was, PVC can be painted. So if you take the right primer and the right paint and listen to it, and the primer I believe he used was a Krylon-based primer or a Rust-Oleum-based primer for plastics. He listened to the instructions for that, then put the final coat on, which was a paint for plastics, and he's had nothing but good luck for it. So we want you to know that our plates can be custom colored with using what we would recommend would be good paints. I wouldn't recommend going down and buy a 99-cent can of your generic local hardware store paint, but I would recommend use of, you know, very good paints with an adhesion promoter as the primer, and then your final paint on top of that. So, all right, so let's get to what we were talking about. If you need to cut a template for us to check, it's extremely easy. This material is somewhat rigid, but it's also soft enough to cut with scissors. You can use, you know, if you have, for some reason, canvas cutting scissors or fiberglass cutting scissors, you can use those. If you just got your local pair of generic store scissors, these are Westcott titanium dollar store scissors. I'm not plugging them, by the way. I'm just saying these are dollar store scissors. You can go ahead and cut this and then get this back to us. This will show up to you in a UPS package with a return label. And so it's all, as soon as you get it, You get this done. We're going to find out how long it takes right now, because I have not done this to this particular motor ever. And actually, I've only done this twice to other motors, but I didn't time it. So we'll find out what it'll take. As you can tell, we're marked top, okay, meaning that this piece, this is the top. We have the bottom to also, and we have forward marked, so you know that this is going to be forward. And then we also tell you that usually you just want to start a cut here in the front end. That allows you to come from the back end and get this thing on there, and then you can start your cut to get the profile or the side view of your lower unit, the width, cut first. After we get that width cut, then we go ahead on the bottom side, and you don't see anything yet, but on the bottom side we will mark the actual ventilation plate. I can't do that for you today because I already have a VARA plate on here, but I can show you how easy it is. Once we get this marked on here, you can tell that the anti-ventilation plate is mounted where these bolt holes are, with the washers on top and the nuts on bottom. But we'll go ahead and show you just a basic concept of how to get this set up and how fast it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, look at this and size this up to see where the tangent point, or the actual intersection point of the ventilation plate, meets the sidewall of the lower unit. So I'll go ahead and I'll say, okay, that dimension is a little bit, this dotted line is something that we send to you, and I just freehand it, so it's not on there. But this one happens to be probably, I would say, 2 inches shy of where it really needs to be. So all I'm going to do is we're going to take and we're going to cut this, and we're going to go right about here. Now you're going to notice it says try not to cut too much past this line. This line back here, or this piece back in this back area, we don't want to cut it because that's going to hold this together and give it some stability, so that we don't have a change in width up front. Okay, also how we help that, when you're done, and before you send your template to us, you will go ahead and you will tape that back together. This will go into a flat box and comes back to us with that pre-addressed envelope, and very easy. It's usually to us within about 2 days, possibly 3, depending upon if you're coming from the upper Northwest. We're located in Tampa, Florida, and that's how easy it is. So let's just get to the work, right? So we'll go ahead and I'm just going to cut on that dotted line as I showed here. And I'm going to go ahead and just split this, because I'm going to show you how easy that is. So if you can see how easy these dollar store scissors come down here. Remember I said we want to be about 2 inches longer. Okay, so we're going to put that on here, right? And you notice you're going to get a bubble in the back. So what we'll do is we'll take a magic marker, which happens to be in my pocket here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and put a real quick cut like this in there, and then I'll just take it off and duplicate that onto this one. All right, so we know that that is not wide enough, but we want to try and go ahead and not take off too much material. Okay, you're going to say, well, what happens if I'm cutting this and I do take off too much material? What's going to happen? It's pretty easy, guys, and maybe we'll go ahead and just show you. But if you go ahead and burn too much material off, we're not going to worry about where our pieces are going right now. But if you take too much material off, all we do is we add, and you have it standing by here, blue tape, and we'll just mark it with blue tape, cut it, and then you just magic marker it. Hey, I cut too much off here, or add 1/8 of an inch, or just give us instructions so that we can build it to what you need, right? But don't worry, if you make a mistake, don't sweat. This is just something that's easy. We want to keep it easy for you. And if you have any questions, as opposed to something that may happen, definitely give us a call, right? All right, now you can see we're starting to get the shape. This is starting to get a little bit flatter, right? But what we got to do is we got to still shape it some more. So we're going to come in. Once again, I'm just going to duplicate that on this side. And we got it, right? So there's no real great big science to this whole thing. You know, you can time how long it takes. And, you know, with your magic marker line, you can just undercut that if you want a little bit. If you notice, I'm not even really worried about the shape just yet. What we're doing is we're going to probably worry about that a little bit more on our next cut. And that'll be the one where hopefully we're honing in on the actual size that's needed. All right. So hopefully you're hanging in there with me. Sorry it's taking so long. And there you go. All right, now once again, we're going to put that right back on here. And now we're getting the back flat, right? If you notice, the back is flat, but the front still needs some more trimming. So we don't want to take off any more in here. We're going to take off in here. All right, once again, we'll duplicate that up front. Okay. And the other thing I want to say is, let's say that your front is remaining skinny. Let's try and shut that off. Let's say your front remains skinny, but your back is too wide. You can slide this thing actually forward on the motor, and it'll allow you to make up for any mistake you might have made there before you mark it on the bottom, right? Because here's the most important relationship that you're going to have. The most important relationship is how this sidewall is laid out with the ventilation plate on the bottom, because that is going to get CNC'd. We take our 1/2 inch dimension here, okay, and we take this 1/2 inch dimension, and we usually go down a little less than half of that, which would be a little less than 1/4 for our recess, to match your motor's ventilation plate thickness. That way we have a nice fair water stream so that it doesn't interfere with the flow going into the prop. We don't aerate the prop in any way, shape, or form, and it's a lot lower drag than many of your other units out there that are offered for sale that may have bolts or nuts and stuff sticking up. Now keep in mind, I don't have the, what you call it, here. Let's see if we can get this running for you. Sorry to step out of your way. Okay, so hopefully you can see underneath here, these are standard nuts, okay? We do not put lock nuts on here, and it'll also show you on our homepage at pontoonhydrofoil.com. If you go to that and then scroll down the homepage, you'll see the actual VARA plate and how it's installed in a very fast 3D model mode, and it'll show you what you do with the vice grips. But we don't use aircraft nuts on the bottom of this. The reason for it is the aircraft nut has a lot larger profile or interference with the water flow. So what we do is we use just a standard nut, and then we ask you to put that on with Loctite. And then we also ask you to take this plate, and when you put the plate down, you'll put it down with a sealant. And that sealant's going to make up for kind of any imperfections in here. And then also you're going to take an awl or a drill punch, okay, and then just punch the seam of where the nut and the bolt are together and tight, and then you punch that seam so it can't turn off, okay? That way we don't have worries about the actual bolts pulling off of here. This plate, just so you know, this plate has been on this boat for 2 years, and we have had absolutely no problem with it. You can see the condition of it. We're going to wait for this trash truck to go through here, and then once they do, we'll say some more.
Yeah, while we have a sec, we just want to mention that the torque specs are going to be in the manual, the VARA plate manual. or online. And what we don't want to do is over tighten the bolts. That will crack the plate, and obviously we don't want to be cracking a $400 item. We want to make sure that we take care of it, and also we want to make sure that we get silicone, not silicone, but RTV silicone or some sort of adhesive underneath there that won't damage the aluminum and or the stainless. And then the last thing, guys, is we just want to make sure that the back end of this thing, when you pre-fit the plate onto the motor, it is hollowed out for any hump that might be behind the back end of the lower unit where it meets the ventilation plate.
Okay, so they've now left. You can see that I've taken and marked it one more time. Now we're really starting to dial in exactly where this plate should be. And keep in mind, when you do these cutouts, we don't want you to be right against the sidewall of the lower unit. We want you to be down where the radius actually stops. So we want to see where the flat area of your plate is, not the radius area. If you give us the radius area, then what we send to you, you would have to kind of trim that off and or radius it. You can do that with a grinder. It's very easy. So if that happens, once again, no worries. You just come in with a grinder, radius it so it's a nice tight fit up against there, and you don't have to worry about the sizing as much. With this particular model, you may notice in the back it's very tight, and then here there's a finger width gap, and then here it's extremely tight. So it kind of shows you that you can get this within 1/4 of an inch, which is the front we like to have as tight as possible. That way it keeps weeds from coming in here. All right, the sides we like to have as tight as possible just for the strength or the structure of it. We like to have as tight as possible all the way around, but if you don't, you know, we just ask that you get close, try and get within about 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch. That's the best thing you can do. If you don't feel like you've done that, you can mark it, make 3/16 smaller, like you can write right on this template, put an arrow and write, you know, what you want us to do, because we pull offsets off of this with a machine. It's about $5,000 machine. We take those offsets, send them to our CNC company, and they complete it from that. All right, so as you can tell, we're pretty much done with the actual location of this. We have this marked in the back here, and what you would do is you'll just come in and mark what I would call a trailing edge. Okay, we'll put a straight line across there. I'm going to put a T and an E, okay, and a T and an E here. That's the trailing edge. And now what we want to do is making sure that it's center up front. We're going to go ahead and you can either tape this in place on the ventilation plate or you can hold it in place. But at that point in time, you're going to take your magic marker and you're going to go around the bottom side, okay, once you know you have this correct, and mark the ventilation plate of where it falls in reference to the actual cutout of the sidewalls that we're going to be giving you, okay? So that's it. That's what we're doing, all right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that on an actual finished model. This is one that we received just yesterday. Actually, this morning it was opened up. This was sent in from a customer. The customer forgot to tape up the center line, but as you can tell, because it was in a flat box, we didn't receive any damage to it, so we're clear to go. But this is an actual, the fellow's name is Fred, we won't tell you last name. This is a 2014 115 horsepower Mercury motor, and this Mercury motor, if you look at it, if you're familiar with Hondas, back in those days, you'll notice that it actually has kind of a Honda roundish ventilation plate in the front. So that's what threw us off. We didn't have a model that matched this. So what we did is we asked Fred to do this. We sent it to him. I think it was about a 4 to 5 day turnaround. And now what we can do is we can reference the bottom, as it says here, with the ventilation plate, and we can CNC one from either the blanks that we have, okay, because we have many blanks. We have over 16 models now. And so we have many blanks for an emergency and or for actual use on if we just have to do a few dimension changes. And so we have one that's going to take, and all we're going to do is we're going to just take and CNC the back end back here, and it's going to match perfectly. Okay, and it's going to match perfectly to the Honda unit. So once again, this was a 2014 115 horsepower Merc, and it's going to fit a Honda unit like just about as good as a Honda unit would fit a Honda unit. So we don't know if, you know, what lower units they're using. We have heard that Tohatsu is or was a big leader in the lower units. There was also another manufacturer that I don't remember right now, but we've heard that now the newer, you know, the newer motors, meaning the 2022s, 2023s, they're actually starting to fabricate their lower units more in-house, and they're becoming more proprietary to their boats. So that's what we're hearing. Don't know how much of a fact that is, but one thing I want to point out here is you can notice the different cuts here on either side. We're not too worried about that, because what we're going to do is we're going to take the most faired cut that he has here, okay, and we're going to plot that into our offset. We'll take and we do what we call NURBs, okay, and that is, NURBs are just splines that we put into it. So we'll take this cut and we'll take this cut, we'll average those out, and if he has any trimming, as I told you, he would take a grinder. Let's say this came in too small. Let's say we NURBed it and splined it or interpolated his template too small. We would go ahead and NURB it or spline it and make it so that he would just have to do some slight modifications on his edge. The big deal is having this correct, so that when we go ahead and put this onto his boat, that the sizing doesn't have to be changed as much. That's a little bit harder for you to do. It can be done. Once again, it's not that hard. It can be done with either a little router, or it can be done with those Dremel tools. I'm not pushing Dremel, I'm just saying a Dremel type tool with a roto bit, and you can reshape or redo the unit from there. So yeah, so that's it. That's how you do the templates. That's how long it takes. And you put it in a box, send it back to us. And if there's anything that you need to write on it, as far as add an eighth, subtract an eighth, whatever, just write it right on there. We have your instructions and we're ready to go. So once again, we want to say thank you for watching our video. Hope that helped out on how you template for a VARA plate in case we don't have your model already in stock, or if we want to check to make sure your model does fit our model on the 2 to 3 that we have. That I'm telling you, we've had 3 models exactly the same, won't tell you what engine, but those 3 models were sent out and they were clearly different for the same year. So that's it. All right, if there's any questions, you get a hold of us at 727-455-5576, pontoonhydrofoil.com, where we make boats go fast, and you can call us at any time. Thank you so much for watching.